but it's a bit of an overview. And there are a couple in particular that I think are interesting. And, as is often true, most of these are set in the Renaissance or pre-Renaissance era, but there are some modern ones that I think are worthy of us talking about. But just to review for last week, started with the whole Mary, did you know? And then went through of a number of the Annunciations, which is kind of where we stopped. And I did talk about having grown up in a heavily Roman Catholic neighborhood. And at least up north, there were a lot of what we would call BVMs in a bathtub, which were personal grottos in people's homes. And it looked like they had taken a clawfoot bathtub and buried half of it and put a statue of the Madonna there. And I'm not please do not hear me in saying anything divisive about this or dismissive, not divisive, but dismissive about this. This is at least for Northern Catholics in my neighborhood. Our parish was Our Lady of Perpetual Help. Many of the kids went to Notre Dame High School. This devotion to Mary was an exceedingly important part. And the whole idea really behind this Sunday school class came from Rosemary. The Women's Circle last year focused on Mary, and Rosemary, kind of double nod toward the Blessed Mother, was had asked whether or not I might be able to get Jim Womack to teach on Marian stuff, and I wasn't able to. I was able this week to get in touch with his son Robert, who is a colleague of Mary Wheeler's at Harpeth Hall, and he's not willing to teach for me this school year, but maybe next. But he and I are hoping to catch tea and coffee in the new year so I can get to know him. But that's what I understand. So anyway, my reference last week to a BVM in a bathtub, now you know what this looks like. I don't know that I've seen one in the South. Do you have them up in Kentucky? Okay. But boy, these are all over the place up north. This was one, of course, last week, our middle reading was the Magnificat. And I thought this was a beautiful painting. I don't know Dadi, 1335. It's out in the Getty collection. Have any of you had a chance to be there in Los Angeles? It's a beautiful museum. It's the architecture of that museum is the same person who did the museum in Atlanta, the High Museum. Meyer, I think his name is. Beautiful modern architecture. I don't remember seeing this there, but Mary sort of pointing down to the lowly. And interestingly, in the book, you see you can clearly read, if you're up close to it, the beginning part of the Magnificat. And so I thought that was kind of nice. The Visitation, and this was, Elaine had asked me whether or not had these, I think these are both really beautiful to me. The joy in the first one and kind of the excitement of Elizabeth patting Mary's tummy in the other one. Here are two more. One by Italian Renaissance in the Louvre. And again, I just think the intimacy between the two is marvelous. And then, of course, Tanner, I can't do a class hardly without showing a Tanner painting. And the surprise of the entrance, I think, is really marvelous. This next one, I actually couldn't find who is the artist, but it's a modern depiction of Mary and Joseph trying to find room. I don't know if any of you have seen it before. Have any of you seen this? Reimagined in modern times. And, here they look like maybe in a barrio outside of Los Angeles, two Hispanic kids. And if you kind of look closely, she's got the Nazareth High School jacket on there, and no vacancy at the hotel, and smoke Wiseman cigarettes, got the camel in the background. Joseph trying to call around and find a place. What do y'all think of that? She says in not a good way. Other thoughts? No? Can't see it on that. Yeah, my guess is that might be the root of the stump, out of the stump of Jesse. It would be my hope. And what's interesting about it is the only thing we see of real vibrant color is the star of the beer sign, and that. But I found, and of course we have over both Joseph and Mary's head because of what's on the glass behind them, halos, right? I found this arresting in a good way for me. Go ahead. Yeah. 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 David, exactly. Yeah. So I find this, again, we're so used to those beautiful bucolic scenes from historical art forms, and yet I found this really very helpful. They're almost like the Annunciation I showed last week of from Tanner and from the Pre-Raphaelites that show Mary as sort of more of a scared teenager almost. I think this is, for me, this was a helpful way to kind of think about what is it in a modern way. I thought about putting illustration up of putzes. Is that in the Moravian tradition that I grew up, because of, if you're grown up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, you've got to have a little bit of Moravian, and the Moravians would do these elaborate nativity scenes in their homes. And one that I can remember really well, the backdrop was Bethlehem with, the trestle for the train, and they had a train running through that. And it was about how to make it particular to your situation. So these folks would do these elaborate nativity scenes kind of out of the South German, ideal. But it also connected to where you were. And I thought that was a nice part of the tradition. So when I saw this, I thought, okay, how do you modernize this as well? Well, let's take a look at some nativity. One of the things that I found interesting that I hadn't really remembered if I had known about it before, and again, very clearly, some of you have backgrounds in fine art. I never had a fine art class in my life, so I come at this as a kind of a novice. But there are all of these Madonna of the Childbirth, a whole sort of subsection, and these were two of the ones that I found. The one on the left, that Jesus actually is not supposed to be out yet. That's symbol of her carrying him, and the other one looking very pregnant there. This is an interesting one. It's out of a museum in Belgrade. And what's significant is, any idea, what do you think of the creche where the child is laid? Yeah, a sarcophagus, or almost an ossuary, a bone box. But this notion of, what's ahead for the Christ child. This one was really interesting. I didn't know this artist, Hans Baldwin Green. Says, by electing to portray the main figure simply and quietly in the back of the stable, he draws the eye first to the ruined architecture and the ox and ass seen on a larger scale on the left. His construction of the interior embraced the opposite poles, foreshadowing as the incisively drawn plinth of the foreground, and the perspective uncertainly something highlighted by the difference in scale between the animals and the figures. The viewer imitation and mannerist alienation are quite clearly not the artist's aims, however. With the help of painted light, whose source seems to be beyond the natural world, he portrays the miracle of the holy night with what is for him an unusual depth of feeling. The infant Jesus, held in his swaddling bands by putti, seems to radiate light onto Joseph's red coat and Mary's hands and face. Through the brick archway in the cracked plastered wall, we glimpse a second miraculous vision. An angel encircled by radiant glory is appearing to a shepherd watching his flock. The fusion of light and shade and the soft modulation of the contours suggests that Baldwin may have come into contact with the Danube school. Anyway, this was, again, a view of the Nativity I had not seen before. And this dark and light in it seems to me really very, very interesting. This is a little bit more something we know, 1490s. It's in the National Gallery. I think that angel hanging up there in the sky. See the difference of the form as we move a little bit further. Here, I thought the light coming in, and we have Joseph pointing to the shepherds, welcome them in, is really, really lovely. Any of you been to the Prado? Have you all? How large is it? Is it a Louvre size? Not quite that big? Yeah. I have, the only time I was in Madrid was to see the final of the 1982 World Cup. Went there, went to the stadium, went to the match, went to the airport, flew back. So at some point I need to get back there to see all that they have. This is Counter-Reformation stuff, and the view of Mary as one who is reverently kneeling before Jesus is part of that. This is the other nativity that I wanted to show you. It's more modern. A friend of mine had posted it the other day and said it was Ossawa Tanner, and I said, I'm pretty sure that's not an Ossawa Tanner. And she came back and realized that in fact it was not. But it is American artist Jerry Malkin's Julius Garibaldi Malkers, 1860 to 1932. He was a leading American proponent of naturalism, won 1932 gold medal from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. And this is just such a human view, you know, compared to the views we often see of the Renaissance painters and from the Middle Ages of you know, this family that's very much, here we have just absolutely exhausted, and yet again we have the light on Jesus. What do y'all think of this? Like it? Yeah. I mean, I think our sensibilities obviously are a little bit different, but this modernism or realism is gives us a glimpse into what it was like. I almost put it side by side with that other one. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, no, no. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, and you know, just speaking a word about comic books. Was it here last week? Was it you that were talking about Classics Illustrated last week? Golly, I read so much good literature when I was a boy through Classics Illustrated. I probably, you know, had 150 of them, and it got me reading Les Miserables in comic book form. Got me to read Les Miserables when I was 12 years old. I mean, it was wonderful. But if you've never read Maus, M-A-U-S, which was a great comic book illustrator whose parents had been in the camps in Europe, and he worked out sort of the family trauma doing these 2 volumes where the Jews were mice, the Germans were German shepherds, and the Poles were pigs. And it is just astounding at the ability to communicate all of this so well. It starts with, I think, the line, "My father bleeds history." And you know, you don't think, you know, comic book can do anything, but really can. Thank you. It is. It was one of the, yeah, but it is for me absolute must reading. It's classic. All right, getting back to more of classic stuff. This is from the National Gallery. I should mention a number of books that I worked out of. Gospel Figures in Art. This is a really lovely little book, and in each one of these, Ken, to your questions last week, it takes the paintings apart a little bit with deeper insight, and I like that. This is something I picked up at the National Gallery a number of years ago, just pictures in their collection of the life of Jesus. And then Bible and Art, Susan Wrights, and Bible and its Painters. Again, I find it so helpful for me to try to get a sense of what has been shown and represented over time and why. This is really interesting. If you look at the manger compared to the one we had a little bit before, what do you think about this? Yeah. Well, he's not always. So you know, I think you know, part of the reason is the vulnerability and the humanity of him. You know, that this is actually a child. But what I find interesting about this is it almost looks like the host, right? It almost looks like a communion. Does anyone else see that? I mean, it's sort of like a basket, but the way he's sort of placed upon it, it almost looks like food. Yeah. And so a reminder that he is not only the host of the meal, but is the host himself. I think that's really, really interesting about that. Okay, some that a little more familiar. Some of you probably know this one by Botticelli, Adoration of the Magi. I think, in fact, this was perhaps even used as a postage stamp at 1 year for a Christmas stamp. One of my favorites. Just love how this is all crowded in together. This is the one that's at the National Gallery in DC. You know, as an undergraduate at American, one of the things that I would do is probably at least once a month go study at the National Gallery. There's a room there with some fountains and ferns that was well lighted, and I would just go take my books and go sit there and read, and then spend part of the afternoon walking around. It's was such a gift to have that kind of an opportunity, and to look at these. Here's another one by Botticelli, little darker, and what's interesting is he's painted himself in, looking out at you at the side. Isn't that amazing? At the Uffizi Gallery. Pardon me, Ron? Did you say something? He's on the far right, yeah. So he's addressing you directly out of the painting, which is fun as well. All right, kind of moving on. I'm always interested in the flight into Egypt. And this is a Tanner one. I probably should have put it a little bit later, but you know, it's not, we don't read a lot about it in the Bible, other than Joseph has this dream, and that's pretty much it. But there's a lot of sort of extra biblical stuff that people pull from. And again, you know, what does that look like? So Tanner has some Orientalist overtones to this. That was a school of painting, the Orientalists, when things started to open up in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. People were traveling all over the Holy Land. These two are interesting. One is a pretty early icon from Egypt, and then the second one is a French Orientalist. He's done 4 different versions of this. One is at the Boston. This one's out at the Hearst Castle from the 1870s. And, you know, taking a little snooze on the Sphinx itself. This one's at the National Gallery, and it may be the most well-known for many. You know, poor Joseph's out there trying to forage for some food for the baby Jesus, and Mary and Jesus look very calm and contented there. This one was new to me, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to read all that I've written there, but the commentary suggests what's interesting is this angel with very defined wings is dividing Joseph and a sleepy Mary and a sleepy baby, and the music that he's playing with his violin is an Ave Maria, I think, or a piece of music there. I had not seen this before. It's a Caravaggio, so comes a little bit late. Another group of paintings, and I think I mentioned this last week. I had gone when I was doing a little travel. I drove the Trans-Canadian highway for a while. Trans-Canadian is a wonderful way to go if you're ever traveling up north, because you can get on it and it says you can go 100 miles an hour. It's kilometers, but it's 100, and so I think that's a good thing. But I ended up in Ottawa. I expected to spend the night. I spent 3 nights, and part of it was I went to the Musée des Beaux-Arts du Canada, and they had $11 million cost overrun when they built it in the 80s. And I walked in and I thought, boy, worth every penny. Why are you complaining? And this painting just captured my imagination, imagining Jesus and John the Baptist playing together as little toddlers. And of course, when you see John the Baptist, often he'll bring the lamb with him. Bernardo Luni, didn't know him, North Italian painter, and of course the little boys have the red hair and the iris, the red iris, red flower points toward the cross in the midst of this. But I love this the face on this little painting of Jesus. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And so then there are a whole bunch of them. You know, here's Madonna and Child with the infant, St. John the Baptist, Da Vinci. I'm not quite sure if she's blessing them, separating them, or, you know, trying to intervene before something bad happens. And then here's one, you know, John saying, "Oh, look, I got a lamb. Let me bring that to you." Well, I'm going to move from this to something that is a little bit, where'd my phone go? Tongue in cheek, but I found very amusing. One of my clergy woman friends posted something on her Facebook page a couple of weeks ago, and it got me chuckling. And I'm only going to show a couple of them, but somebody had gone through Renaissance art and had, there it goes. A friend's beautiful baby post led me down the rabbit hole of Renaissance paintings, and there's a virgin and child for every moment of parenting. And so let's see which ones I have here. Madonna and the Goldfinch, the Madonna of whatever keeps the baby quiet, which isn't that so unusual? Although the goldfinch, again in art, is a symbol pointing to the resurrection, or not to the crucifixion, and I can't remember why that is, but there are a number of paintings with the goldfinch that I ran across. It's a really intimate piece in Madonna and the Child with the Book, Raphael, Jesus of the One More Bedtime Story. This one, Madonna and Child with Saints, or she calls Madonna and the Helpful Strangers. Poor Mary just wanted to head to the market for diapers and maybe a bottle of wine if the baby will tolerate 2 stops this close to nap time. But the helpful strangers have other plans. Is he warm enough? One asks. When my babies were little, we didn't have them in lowly mangers. Also, we started them on full shafts of wheat at 3 months. It helps them sleep better through the night, mentions another. Breast is best, chimes the third, but please remain covered up, she helpfully adds. These are the best years of your life, offers an older man whose grandchildren are probably teenagers by now and who never once had to take his infant out of the house alone. Thank you, smiles the virgin, although through clenched teeth. She skips the line and goes home to invent Amazon Prime. This one, Madonna with the Child, beautiful. I think this is just glorious. And this is Lady of the Will You Please Stop Playing With It and Just Eat? I don't really need every angel within 10-mile radius getting an eyeful. Yeah. And then Madonna and Child Enthroned with Two Angels. And let me see if I can read that. This version of the quarantine was simply not cut out for this level of intensive parenting. Homeschooling, entertaining children, disinfecting groceries, cooking, cleaning, consent snacks, and utter lack of social interaction. She kind of wishes she could be left alone for a while and lose herself in a few episodes of The Office. But the children have taken complete control of the programming. She'll have to settle for a podcast of her headphones or a little Bailey's in her coffee while yet another episode of Paw Patrol plays in the next room. She spends her days refreshing her memory of third grade math and searching Pinterest for kid-friendly activity that doesn't involve glue and glitter. She feels like she used to have a job outside the house, but she can't seem to remember what it was like. Did she really wear a bra every day? That can't be right. Happy hour has been moved to 3 o'clock these days. She's thinking of starting a garden, but really, who has time? Anyway, she has to check the scrolls for errors for the children to submit. Anyway, I thought that was fun, but you know, seeing all of these different images and especially the personal images of trying to get a sense of what emotion was there. And I find when I read scripture, trying to get a sense as I read it, what was the emotional dimension of what's happening in this scene? What must it have been like? And of course, the only way we can do that is through, you know, sanctified imagination. And as we try to get a glimpse of what all of that was about, well, there could be more, but which was your favorite of today, of these images? This one? Isn't that really? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're both just absolutely exhausted. Um, yeah. Yeah. And I apologize. I often will, when I do these, try to find a little bit more modern ones. But when I was putting this together, I was thinking of this one in particular. Did you get it? I couldn't find it quickly. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. 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 And then for me, this Nazareth High School on her jacket. Yeah, exactly. And you know, she's on this um the kind of horse that I used to love to ride outside the Acme when I was a kid. Yeah. Yeah. Look at those eyes. Yeah. On the side of the pole. Uh, Zeke, 34, 15 through 16. So Ezekiel. Yeah. Isn't that great? Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that the cigarettes are Smoke Wiseman cigarettes, Weisman, Wiseman cigarettes. Yeah. I don't I'd have to look it up. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wh- I can't read that. Do you have close up in on your phone? I can't. I'm sorry. What did I say? Ezekiel 35, 34, 15 through 16. Huh. And Ezekiel 34, 15 through 16 is, I myself will tend my sheep and have them lie down, declares the sovereign Lord. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. Yeah. So, all right. Well, blessings on you. I hope in January we're not going to have class. This class, I probably should have acknowledged that there were people on Zoom, but I've just cut them off. I'm sorry. Bad guy. So next Sunday, what is next Sunday? There we are, Christmas. And Guy's preaching, so we don't have any Sunday school. We only have one service anyway. And the 1st of January, we only have one service. Donovan's preaching. Guy offered to do a favor for his friend and a former moderator, or not moderator, executive presbyter, Warner Jernell. Warner's been filling the pulpit at First not Murfreesboro, but First. I need to know where this place is. Yeah, McMinnville. And I keep wondering if they're going to pay me with a tree, give me a tree or something. But I told him I would take the pulpit for him New Year's Day on the December 31st is his wife's birthday, so he doesn't need to be working on. So, and then the 8th will be the next time we have class here, and I'm hoping that we'll get Kem Hinton back for a couple of things in January. We do have something I want to put on your radar. On January 22nd, we have a woman coming who has done a documentary film about Presbyterian ministers in the South during the Civil Rights period. And it's receiving really good publicity around the churches in the South where it's been shown. Knox Walkup, for those of you who know Knox in the church, Daddy was one of the pastors who was influential in that period, and his mother was interviewed just months before she passed at 104. And so that's going to be shown the night of Sunday the 22nd here. I haven't quite pinned down the time, but I really would love for y'all to be able to come out and be part of that. And then on the 29th, we'll have the new president of Columbia Theological Seminary, Victor Aloyo, will be preaching and teaching that morning. So a friend of mine, he used to be at Princeton. So grace and peace. Have a Merry Christmas. Yep.